Lady, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave the store.
Who the hell are you?
Name's Ash. Housewares.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening, or wherever you are in the world. We're here to talk about the failed fantasy blockbusters. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me is my co-host, Matt Caringo.
That's me.
Matt, we're here to talk about one
Joe
of the
Biden
greatest...
stepping down.
Oh, God, no.
Well, I just want to...
although...
I feel like to bring it up because when we recorded our last two episodes on the same day, Trump had just been shot.
Don't tell them.
Hey, they don't. It don't matter. None of this matters. Trump had just been shot, and Biden got COVID, and now we're recording less than a week after those two episodes, and Joe Biden is officially dropped out of the race. By the time you're listening to this, we're probably already being rounded up into Trump camps. But
oh my God.
Things are happening fast. So sorry if some of our current events discussions feel a little off. Although I want to,
history is happening too much.
Yeah, it's happening too much. Although I do want to make one thing clear. Remember when I was floating the idea that Joe Biden might be a political genius, like about a year ago on the podcast? Uh-huh. I think I might have been wrong.
You think?
I think. I hate to judge before all the facts are in, but I think I might have been wrong in my assumption that he actually knew what he was doing and had a plan. So,
well, look, someone who wasn't wrong about that specifically was me. And that's what's really the important takeaway from today.
Hey.
But we're also here to talk about the most important cinematic trilogy in film history. Well, but really, we're here to talk about Army of Darkness, directed by Sam Raimi.
Yeah, but we're going to use it as an
Bruce
excuse
Campbell.
to talk about most of the Evil Dead movies.
Yeah. I have a lot to say about Army of Darkness, though. I'm curious about your history with Army of Darkness. We talk about Sam Raimi so fucking much.
Yeah, we do.
We did the Spider-Man trilogy, and in that I mentioned I wasn't like a huge Evil Dead head, and especially when I first started like my movie watching life. But now I'm obviously a huge fan. But for a while, Army of Darkness was kind of my favorite.
Yeah.
And then rewatching it, it's still not my favorite, but my God, I think it's super fun. Matt, what's your history with Army of Darkness?
Well, I guess I think we have to do two histories here, because we have our history with Sam Raimi, right? Which I think for just both of us is the Spider-Man movies, correct?
Yeah.
I believe that's the answer there. And then we have to do our history with Bruce Campbell, who has cameos in those movies, but also both of them overlap with... As I've brought up, I bet it's going to come up a lot. Hercules: The Legendary Journeys and Xena Warrior Princess, which used to air on the Sci-Fi Channel. I cannot remember if I saw them pre or post the Spider-Man movies. But as those of you know, Bruce Campbell played Autolycus, King of Thieves, on both those shows. So like I was vaguely aware of who he was, and then as I'm becoming like more and more of a horror nerd, AMC did some special that was like Entertainment Weekly's top 20 scariest movies of all time, and it was hosted by Bruce Campbell. And it was Bruce Campbell basically doing his Bruce Campbell thing, right? Of just being like, hey, you think you can handle this? Well, I'm here. It was like as he hosts it, like he gets like attacked by zombies in the special, but he's like, oh, you think you can take me? And shit like that. And I'm trying to remember what the top 20 were. It was Jaws, Evil Dead, Carrie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The outlier was like Lost Highway. Like that was a weird one that was on there, which is probably my introduction to David Lynch, like as a person. I I can't remember the rest of them. It was a lot of like more classic stuff. Like I think Halloween was on there, right? Like all that stuff. But I can't remember the full list. It wasn't like a comprehensive one. And then I guess the other introduction that we both might know is the Spider-Man video game.
Yeah.
Where he was the tutorial guy where he basically just makes fun of you.
Which is perfect for him.
No, it's great. It's like, oh, you need to be told how to move forward, idiot. Like he starts eating his food in between takes. Like you can hear him eating a sandwich. It's the best. But I think I didn't know he was a horror guy until that special, and then it was like Evil Dead was on my radar, and I was like, well, I guess I have to watch Evil Dead. And my dad was a big Evil Dead fan. Just the first one. Like he wasn't like a sequels guy. My dad was always like the sequels are never good, so he only ever liked first movies. So I watched Evil Dead as a kid, and I was like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, I mean, if I could just say really quick, like, I think the first Evil Dead kind of gets lumped in with Evil Dead 2 as like, oh, it's campy and it's a comedy. And it's like, yeah, the first Evil Dead's obviously very cheap. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, technically, like, you wouldn't put it next to the makeup effects in the newer Evil Dead movies, right?
No.
Like, that's unfair. That movie's fucked up. And that movie's like still scary, I think.
It's more,
I think people totally miss that.
It's closer to Texas Chainsaw Massacre than it is to the Evil Dead sequels. That first one, right? Like of just like, let's go out to the woods and film a fucking horror movie. And I mean, I think every kid's first horror movie is kind of that. You just go into the woods and just film something, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I probably tried to remake Evil Dead about 17 times as a kid.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, there's a film that is basically Evil Dead that I'm not sure people know about called Equinox from the 1970s. It was another one just made by a bunch of kids who went out into the woods, and it basically has it has a lot of very Evil Dead similarities of like there's a book that was read from and it unleashed monsters, and they're like very Harryhausen-esque monsters, you know. Directed, uncredited, directed by Dennis Muren, who would go on to ILM and Star Wars. So big special. And guess who put out Equinox on DVD?
It's gonna be like Disney or something, huh?
No, the Criterion Collection.
Whoa.
So I believe they still have it in their collection, just only on DVD.
Like Armageddon and The Rock.
Yes, exactly. Except I think if you go to the Criterion channel, you can actually watch Equinox. So
I'm gonna have to do that after this.
yeah, it's actually pretty fun if you're into that kind of horror movie type stuff. It's definitely more in line with like a 50s horror movie than Evil Dead, but it is such a it has a lot of the same beats as Evil Dead, but they like learned Evil Dead kind of learned how to actually make it scary. So but yeah, the first Evil Dead is like a very, very serious horror film. I wouldn't say serious, but like it's not winking the same way the sequels are.
Yeah. Especially the immediate sequels.
Yes. Well, what's crazy to me is that Raimi wanted to do Army of Darkness immediately off of Evil Dead. Like, he wanted to do what at the time was going to be called the Medieval Dead, right after the first Evil Dead. And I think it was Dino De Laurentiis that was like, no, you have to do Evil Dead 2 first. Like...
Well, I think it was also a budget thing, which I only found out recently. I gotta be honest, that they wanted to do Army of Darkness immediately. I knew the Medieval Dead title, because that's the greatest title of an unmade movie in the history of movies.
Yeah. Like,
someone do an Army of Darkness riff again in the franchise, totally do that, and then finally call a movie Medieval Dead. $5 bajillion of my money. Like, right there. It's the greatest title ever, I think. Yeah, and then Dino, our boy Dino's back, and I guess because Evil Dead made like more money than God for its budget, like especially internationally.
I like how
And
the
so he's like,
the Wikipedia page says the box office for The Evil Dead was either 2.9 million or 29 million.
That's so funny.
Although I heard some story, if you want to know about Sam Raimi, because they got like they basically just went around and got like random investors for it. And one guy was like, Sam Raimi's the only guy I've ever invested with that pays on time. Where he's like, all these years later,
Wow.
there's no haggling, there's no nothing, and he pays me the exact amount we agreed upon in 1981. Like, and it was like, good guy Sam Raimi. Like, it was just it was an interesting little beat. But yeah, so like so they jumped from Evil Dead 2, and say what you will about Dilo De Laurentiis, I think he made the right call. I think you do need Evil Dead 2 between the two movies.
I agree, but I'm also like, fuck. He would have called it Medieval Dead. He would have let them call it that.
I get it, but I just think that you need Evil Dead 2 because that is sort of the palate cleanser of just like the shift, right? That it's going to go from a horror movie to basically an action adventure story with fantasy elements,
Yeah, yeah, because the second one, like, I had to kind of pitch Evil Dead 2 to some friends because the first Evil Dead is Cabin in the Woods movie, right? And the second one, I'm like, yeah, it's Cabin in the Woods movie, but like the shit they do, like it's almost an excuse for the set pieces,
yeah,
right? And the set pieces in that are so inventive, and they're using every special effects, animation trick possible to pull off these set. There's a fucking like the demon face coming in through the door at the end is just such a fucking awesome visual. The stop motion corpse girlfriend dance outside in the moonlight, like that movie is really like, it feels like, okay, fine, I gotta do the same movie again. Here's like everything that we could never ever have dreamt of doing, and now we're doing it.
I mean, it's a little bit Temple of Doom in that way. Of just
yeah,
like,
but I don't like feel bad watching Evil Dead 2 for like women and people of color.
It's a little bit of an inverse of Temple of Doom because the problematic elements from Evil Dead 1 do not carry over to Evil Dead 2. So, so it actually improves a little bit. But I was thinking like, it is an excuse to just do a bunch of set pieces, but it's also, Evil Dead 2 is such a brilliant movie, and it basically exists in like three weird chunks, which are, the first half is just Bruce Campbell just getting the shit kicked out of him. Like, it's just him, like, he's fighting his own hand, he's doing all sorts of crazy shit. The middle chunk is kind of just a rerun of the Evil Dead plot, like a truncated version of that, where like we get four new people, and then like one by one they either get picked off or turn into demons, right? That's what happens. But then, and this is I think the important part, by the third chunk is Bruce Campbell becomes a superhero. Like, he's by the end of it he suits up, he's got the chainsaws already and goes groovy. Like, and when you consider how he started at the beginning of the movie, where he's just getting fucking the shit kicked out of him and he looks like a boob, to then by the end be like, he's gonna be the hero of this story, is kind of impressive for like a movie that's not like exactly like a complicated plot. It's basically, like I said, it's just an excuse to have set pieces happen, but they still found a way to do a very interesting hero arc, right? And a doomed hero arc because he's in a horror movie, so it ends with him getting sucked through a portal.
Although, like, yeah, doomed hero narrative, totally. But like, just hearing about what inspired Raimi and this team with Army of Darkness specifically, does like give insight into how, like, no, they do put more thought into even a slapstick style narrative of the early Evil Dead stuff. You know what I mean? Like, they understand like the weight of like a hero in a story like this, and even a goofy hero who shouldn't, frankly, Ash should not be the hero of any story.
No, he shouldn't.
Let alone like a supernatural horror thriller, right?
I also like Ash. Ash is a little different than someone like Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. The big difference is Jack Burton like desperately wants to be the hero, and Ash has this weird love-hate relationship with his hero where he's like, of course I'm the hero, and then he's also like, but fuck you, I don't want to do this. Like, he's got this great balance of it. So it's just a great dynamic. What's your pathway to all this?
Spider-Man movies, Bruce Campbell, right? I'm like, oh, that guy's funny. You know, I don't even like really catch that it's the same guy in all the movies until I'm older, and I'm like, oh, right? Like, like I think there was even like a Tumblr post, which I had caught on by then, but like a Tumblr post that was like, did you know, like, this guy is actually like, he's been friends with the director, and he cameos in all his movies along with his car, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, fun
the
stuff.
car Sam Raimi lost his virginity in.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. And then I watched a little show called Burn Notice on USA.
Yes.
Which co-stars the great Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other people. And that is exactly what procedural television should be.
Yeah, no, that was a great show. I feel like people were recently defending Burn Notice for some reason. I felt like there was some discussion happening on Twitter about Burn Notice and people being like, that was actually a good show, because it was.
It's super entertaining, super fun. Every once in a while, they do what I love with classic like television from when we grew up. Is like they would have like the plot-driven episodes as the beginning and the end of the season, sometimes in the middle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then everything else is like standalone. And they're like, oh, that investigation maybe ties into the overall plot, maybe not, but it doesn't matter because the character's got to go on a journey for this week. And, that it's just so much fun. I don't remember all of the show. I remember the ending being pretty enjoyable for a show that ran for 7 seasons, which is like a fucking lot.
Yeah.
But and these were like 16-episode seasons. But yeah. Bruce Campbell is like, he's like a rock star in that show.
Yeah,
like,
he's kind of the dream role where he's like the handler who just is like in too deep and is wearing Hawaiian shirts all the time.
Yeah, he must have had a fucking blast. And Bruce Campbell like understands like his reception to audiences too, because he's like spoken about how like like the horror people love me for Evil Dead and like the Raimi stuff, the genre stuff. But those same audiences might not love Burn Notice, and the Burn Notice fans might not love the horror genre stuff. So he's able to find niches that are very specific in 2 totally different facilities.
Yeah. Well, it's
which I
kind
just
of
find
the
very
thing.
Interesting.
Burn Notice kind of ended up being the vehicle he kind of always deserved, right? Because he never kind of got out of the genre stuff. Like, and Burn Notice is still a genre show, but it's a different genre. And
it's spy stuff.
Yeah. And like I feel like now, like ever since Burn Notice, he can kind of just do what he wants. Like I bet you the residuals on Burn Notice are pretty good. So
yeah, that was the last time they had residuals on shows.
Aww. So but
yeah. By the way, if you're curious why streaming is just pivoting back to cable packaging, it's because people don't have to deal with residuals anymore. And by people, I mean the robotic machines known as executive producers.
Yay, what great people.
Yeah.
Everyone's
so
great.
See you on the next strike in 3 years, everyone.
It's going to be fun.
Anyways, yeah, Bruce Campbell rocks. I am like shocked that he did never have like a big starring role outside of Army of Darkness and the Evil Dead movies. But like Army of Darkness is the only like mainstream Hollywood picture that he got to star in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was in Maniac Cop, which was like a kind of quiet hit, right? Like,
It was a quiet hit. Yeah, but he gets killed off at the beginning of the second one.
Yes, it didn't go anywhere.
Which is the better movie, but like it is a bummer.
Yeah, it is a bummer, but I think it takes a while because you watch Maniac Cop and they're trying to make him more a conventional lead, right? Like they're trying to make him a type of character that he just isn't. And I think it takes a while before people understand his sort of cult appeal, right? And he's, it's like this was kind of the last attempt, I think, to make him a mainstream actor was Army of Darkness. And he's in stuff afterwards, but not to the same degree, right? Like,
yeah,
he's, he does a couple cameos with the Coens because they're friends, and he does the cameos in Spider-Man movies. I think let me look. Because he had a TV show before Xena, The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., which is like right after this, but it lasted one season.
A friend of mine, PJ Campbell, old Twitter pal. We're still in a group chat talking shit and hyping each other up about movies. He has gone to bat for that show so fucking hard.
I've seen it. It's good.
We've been friends for like a decade now, and he still is telling me like, I gotta watch it because we both like love Bruce Campbell. And
it's good. It's good.
All right, I'll check it out.
I'm basically telling you what to watch, like all the cable shit I watched when I was like 8 years old, because it's like Briscoe County Jr., Jack of All Trades is this other one you should check out, and then like Hercules and Xena and shit like that. Cleopatra 2525, whatever the fuck that show was called.
I have to shout out his cameo in John Carpenter's Escape from L.A.
Yep.
as the Surgeon General of Beverly Hills.
Yeah, he's good in that.
Yeah, it's a very fun role and a very fun movie.
But weird to think that they even crossed over though, because like they seem like two different worlds, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got Bubba Hotep in there somewhere, which was another like cult classic. I think for our generation, we probably know a lot of people our age probably know him as Coach Boomer from Sky High.
Yeah.
Which that's a movie that's kind of just stacked with cult actors. So whoever cast that movie was a genius.
That movie is so stacked with fucking nerd shit that if you made that same movie now, I think it's rejected because of that. Where it's like, oh, this is so cloying and whatever.
Yeah.
And then you watch the movie and it's like actually pretty sincere.
Yeah.
And like you get why it's kind of like held up in regard.
It didn't feel that way at the time, right? Like it.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It felt like it was the filmmakers themselves having fun, as opposed to like, we'll get these nerds to watch if we put Kurt Russell in it.
Yeah.
And then you got, and now you got fucking Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's like kind of becoming a nerd icon, right? Like she's doing shit.
Yeah, I mean, she's sort of like I don't want to take anything away from her own credit because she rocks, right? But like she is kind of like the modern Bruce Campbell, where it's like, man, this person is clearly a star, not really given the space to become a star. We don't know why.
I think
I genuinely don't.
They have struggled to find out what her strengths are in terms of her appeal, right? Like, I think there's just a little bit of that. She's so good in Birds of Prey, but she's also, like, meant to be someone who, like, because she spent so much time murdering people, she doesn't know how to connect on a basic human level.
Yeah. Like, what a great character trait.
No, it's great. She's really good in it. But I don't know, maybe she's got more range, so it's more just finding her the right vehicles, right? She was on Ahsoka, correct?
Yeah, she plays the live-action version of Hera, which is not the role I would have given Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
I would not have
Star
wasted a Mary Elizabeth Winstead in that role.
And in fact, maybe I would have just made all the Mandalorian-connected stuff into an animated series.
Yeah.
Because every generation of Star Wars has that little pocket animated series in between a trilogy. You know which one doesn't? The one that just came out.
Yeah.
I just think that's weird. Sorry. That's my Star Wars rant for today. That's it. I promise.
It's fine. I'm not judging.
Okay.
I did not know this. She's in A Good Day to Die Hard, right? Because she's his daughter. But
Yeah,
only
she's in Live Free or Die Hard, and then she gets a cameo at the beginning and the end of A Good Day to Die Hard.
but only in the theatrical cut. It says.
I didn't know there was another version of that movie.
Who fucking knows, man? No one's.
You're referring to A Good Day to Die Hard,
Yeah,
right?
no one's watched that movie more than once. So
Yeah, that's the longest 90-minute movie of all time.
I know it's really bad.
I'm not even fucking joking. I saw it with my friend, and we were like, we couldn't believe it was still going.
Yeah.
And we're like, it's only been an hour.
What a bummer of a note to end the Die Hard series on.
Yeah. And you know what? This is just me, like, getting older and looking back at stuff with, like, rose-colored glasses. But I do love that it's like, yeah, that's just how franchises used to end. When they just got bad and stopped making money.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, there was no epic culmination, no grand finale. It's like, no, we got cheap. Sorry, everyone. We fucked up. All right, goodbye. Have
Yeah.
a good night. Tip your waiters.
Yeah, basically.
Actually, they're Hollywood producers, so don't tip anyone.
They don't
and
tip anyone
take everyone's
ever.
money. Yeah, don't just fucking lie and leave. But yeah, that's again rose-colored glasses of the whole thing, but very funny that it's like, oh man, Die Hard. How does that franchise go? Well, you just don't watch that last one. You'll be all right.
Yeah, you'll be fine if you don't watch the last one.
Yeah. Yeah. Bummer. God, I have not thought about Good Day to Die Hard in forever.
Yeah, I
Wow.
do that. I unfortunately do that when we do this show, bringing up movies
No,
that
it's
were
fine.
rightfully forgotten. But
No, it's fine. It's fine. But to speak about directors that have no strengths, sorry, John Moore. Maybe you're a decent guy. I don't know. I don't know why he got Die Hard. They probably just wanted to get it made and he could do stuff on budget or whatever.
yeah,
Like Sam Raimi, I've never thought about this because I just think he has a multitude of strengths, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he is an unbelievably talented director who can operate in basically any genre because he loves all genres and he has his preferences obviously, but he knows what it takes to make elements of a movie work regardless of the genre.
yeah.
And maybe give him A Good Day to Die Hard. That
Well, he's
movie
also-
ends
he's-
up being much better.
He's also been very clear in that he is not a horror. Like he's never considered himself a horror guy. Like he's like, I made a horror film because it was where I could get money, right? Like it's like we could get funding for a horror movie, but he's never totally considered himself a. He's never considered himself a horror director. But beyond that, it's interesting. It's like, yeah, I think he could do more genre stuff, but he's just not. I don't know. He was never given that chance, or when he was, it didn't totally pay off. Like he has that Simple Plan for Love of the Game and The Gift run, and it just kind of doesn't go anywhere, and then he gets sucked in the Spider-Man world, you know. And Spider-Man shows its own strengths, obviously, but beyond that, there's not much going on there, you know.
Well, I mean, like, I think stuff like Simple Plan and the Spider-Man movies especially, so like a real sincerity with them, you know? Like, there's I mean, he's basically credited for making, like, maybe the single defining movie romance of the post 9/11 America, right? Like with Peter Parker and Mary Jane in the Spider-Man movies. Like, is there any comparable movie romance of that scale now? Like, is there anything equivalent to that upside down kiss in movies lately? I don't know. And I don't even mean that to diss other movie romances. I just mean, like, that's the power of his capabilities, right? Like, as a filmmaker and a storyteller. And his collaborators, of course, but, he's the one who brings it all home. And I just, like, to be able to go from that legendary romance and have it come from the guy who also made, like, there's someone in my fruit cellar is, like, just, that's really inspiring to me.
Yeah. So when did you get to Evil Dead? I don't know if you mentioned that.
Oh, yeah. Probably about, like, God, definitely last decade. Probably around, like, maybe even 2015. No, that seems a little late. God, I could not tell you the exact year, but it was early to mid 2010s.
Okay.
I'd have to say.
I'm a little surprised.
Yeah.
I always forget you're such a late comer to horror.
Yeah. And then Army of Darkness is the one that like I'm really drawn to because I just love like the pulpy adventure stuff the most. Like that's always something I kind of strive for personally.
No, yeah.
And then I also love just like Lord of the Rings and obviously shit like that. And so like the fantasy elements of Army of Darkness specifically like really spoke to me.
Well, you know
like,
I
it's
think
much goofier, right?
yeah. You know who I think is a big fan of this movie? One Mr. George R.R. Martin.
Oh yeah.
I feel like the White Walkers and all that shit is inspired by Army of Darkness.
That's interesting.
I've never seen him say it
never
anywhere,
made that connection.
but I just get that vibe of like an Army of the Undead comes from that, and it's like 92, and that's around the time he starts writing it. So you know,
I could see that
because like those
and that's
those books and movie and show are full of like tons of horror references. So just makes me think maybe he had some he's vibing with it somewhat.
You know, because this is kind of like a busy movie narratively, and we'll talk about it's like in every version of its existence now it is truncated from what they wanted to set out to make, right? Like they've been very open about that, but I think they also have a movie to be very proud of. And there's just so much like quote unquote lore packed into this movie, and it's kind of never remarked upon, like at least by any like retrospective stuff. I've not to pat ourselves on the back. I'm sure there's someone out there who's like, actually, I talked about it and I just totally miss it. But there's just so much like weird fantasy shit in this movie, and I just like really love that like it's not like it's wasted on a single movie because that's what movies are supposed to do. You're supposed to put like all your ideas for a movie into one singular movie and for a narrative and a story purpose and a journey and an arc and blah, 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 right? But it so often feels like this stuff gets spread out more nowadays, or you only do this for like world building franchise purposes. Like all the stuff, the weirdest shit in this movie for like the Necronomicon only gets kind of picked up in an equivalent like sizable manner in the Ash vs. Evil Dead series, whereas that one gets like super weird and shit too, right?
Yeah.
All the other Evil Deads are really contained, probably for budget reasons, but
the comic series that came afterwards.
Oh yes, which I have not read.
Which I have read, and the guy who wrote a chunk of the issues, I'm not sure how many. His wife was my high school biology teacher.
Oh wow!
Yeah, shout out to Mike Rach, who was probably one of my better teachers in high school. I had because of getting sick, I had to take biology 3 times because you couldn't do that one at home with a tutor. So when I was sick, so I ended up having her twice as a teacher, and she was pretty cool.
That's good.
Although I ended up the last year I had her, I ended up with one. I was a senior with a bunch of sophomores, right? And then it was the last period of the day. So I'm sure you remember how people can kind of slap happy last period.
Yeah, because our brains are so fucking fried.
Yeah, because we just want to get the fuck out of there. So made for some interesting. But yeah, he wrote a chunk of the Evil Dead comic book. I don't know if he wrote any of the versus stuff because it eventually turned into like Army of Darkness versus Freddy versus Jason and shit like that.
Yeah, Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, and then Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the Nightmare Warriors. Mm-hmm. I've heard positive things about all this stuff. I don't know any of
I think
this
it's all
stuff.
from Dynamite Comics, and they actually do pretty fun stuff. If you just want like fun, ridiculous, pulpy stuff like that, like Dynamite Comics does pretty good.
And I will say, like, Ash, like, being like, woo, finally escaped those nasty Deadites, and then, like, stumbling across Freddy and Jason is kind of perfect.
Yeah. Well, that was almost going to be the second movie, right? That They were they seriously considered it for the Freddy vs. Jason sequel, and then fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake that made so much money. Everyone was like, let's just do remakes.
That fucking sucks. I don't even like worship the Freddy vs. Jason movie, but like it's pretty fun.
It's fun,
and
it's like I can see
if you're gonna do team up movies or versus movies, like it's kind of it's kind of what you want to aim for, like the barometer of entertainment quality.
Yeah. And since then, we've had one Friday the 13th film and one Nightmare on Elm Street film.
Yeah, so good job, everyone.
Yeah. So it was worth it. It was worth it.
So stupid.
I know.
Everything's so stupid.
I know. Everything's dumb. Everything's so dumb. How do you fuck that up?
I know. There's money on the table. It's like, goddamn, like I don't even care. Go listen to our Friday the 13th retrospective we did last year, but like, I don't even like have a reverence for those movies, but you just got money on the table. Like those are, apart from Evil Dead, those are kind of the Cabin in the Woods movies.
Yeah.
Like that everyone knows.
Jason's iconic. Like it's one of the easiest costumes for kids to make, right? Because you just need a hockey mask.
Yeah. So ridiculous.
They can't do it. They just
and then get a styrofoam machete.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. You know what isn't money in the bank though? Apparently,
Evil Dead.
Yeah, Evil Dead. I mean, I think Evil Dead 2 made money, but like every other time they've tried to bring Ash back, it kind of underperforms, right? Like Evil Dead's got such a weird arc in terms of the money it makes though, because like that remake reboot they did make money, right? Like Evil Dead 2013 made money, correct?
Yes.
And then it like no sequel. And then 10 years later, Evil Dead Rise, which made, I think, even more money. And it's like they're talking about a sequel, but like I'll fucking believe it when I see it, right?
Yeah, well, they're talking about 2. There are 2 in active development.
Yeah. And?
Which is, yeah. Although to be fair, at the time of recording, we are barely not even a year and a half away from Evil Dead Rise, and both of them got announced like this year. So we will see what happens. One, I think, is a direct follow-up to Evil Dead Rise, and another one is just like some other thing in a timeline. If you want to be like all like
have they
franchise lore about it,
have they officially given up trying to bring Ash back?
I think so. There is an animated sequel series to Ash vs. Evil Dead in development.
Okay.
Which Bruce Campbell would play Ash again.
Yes.
But I think that's the only way he's going to do it. Because, he's older now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the joke of
spent
Ash versus Evil Dead is that he's too old to be doing this shit anymore.
Yeah. And then it goes on for 3 seasons.
Yeah. It went on for 3 seasons, and like it didn't. I think it was just one where like there was enough cult energy to keep it going, but it didn't perform as strongly as I think people wanted it to.
Yeah.
And was basically just canceled. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah. I don't know. I think an animated Evil Dead sounds super fun, by the way, so I do hope that comes to fruition. Now, the only person I've heard that from, maybe there's more on the internet that I just missed, but the only person who's talked about that animated show is Bruce Campbell himself. So,
who just says anything.
Now, I like that he just says anything. That's part of his charm, just being able to kind of just, lie.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love that he's able to.
He's never lying
talk
about
a big game.
He's never lying about anything that's like that important, right? Like.
Yeah. It's sort of it's like a more flamboyant version of the George Lucas mythology.
Yeah.
He's like kind of building his own mythology in relation to Sam Raimi and the Evil Dead, and like they're buddies. Like it's all in good fun. That's the thing. It's all in good fun. But, that does mean that animated show might not be real, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all.
There's a good to fair chance it isn't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, there was talk about bringing Ash back for, like, a crossover movie after the Evil Dead 2013 from Fede Alvarez. And then I guess that just dissipated. Although, I've heard that Jane Levy had a very difficult time with the production of that movie. Not in like a not in. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone like that. It's just the Evil Deads are also notoriously like just exhausting.
Yeah.
To make.
They aren't.
They're
fun
very
to
active
make.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're fun movies to watch, but now we can talk about Army of Darkness a little bit more. This is allegedly the most difficult production anyone who ever worked in this movie had ever been on, except for like one of the makeup guys. I'm sorry, I forget which one exactly, but they were like, "This is a highlight of my career. I'd never had a better time making a movie." And Bruce Campbell, like, cut to him, and he was just like, "Yeah, I kind of look down on actors because I'm like, if you didn't work on Army of Darkness, your days couldn't have been that bad." It's like,
well, think about it.
That's kind of a big statement.
They're trying to do a fantasy epic on an $11 million budget in 1992. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It was folly to think they could do it, but they did it. Like,
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think it's successful. Would you agree?
I know. I 100% believe it's successful. I love this movie. I would also say it's. I don't know where I rank it. Evil Dead 2 just kind of takes the cake and like runs with it. Like, it's just that's such a great movie. I don't know where I'd rank Army of Darkness versus the other ones, but this is just such a fun movie, and it's a fantasy epic it's in the style of like a Harryhausen film, which I love those type of movies. Like, it's so Jason of the Argonauts that it's crazy, and I love that shit. It has the right amount of sense of humor about itself that isn't the like, well, that happened type sense of humor. It understands the comedy of putting Ash in this situation. And I just think it works tremendously. And it's also one where, like, when it does look cheap, it's cheap in a fun way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like clearly the castle doesn't. It's like the only set they have, but it's a fun set. And there's no way. Why is this castle in the middle of a desert? It doesn't really matter. But it's
Yeah, I think one of the production designers was like from England or something like that, and they had just done some other like fantasy or like historical epic of some kind, and then Sam Raimi's like, "Oh yeah, so we got one tree. Where do you want to put the tree?" And the guy was like, "All right, we do it over there." And if you look at the movie, there's not a lot of foliage. So I don't think that was a joke. I think there is one tree.
Yeah, no, that would
in front of the castle. I mean,
yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's the budget we're dealing with here. Okay. I say all of this with terms of endearment.
No, same.
Yeah.
And again, it's just great set piece after great set piece. Like, you get the pit. Like, the pit is so fun. And it's just like it's just so funny to think of Ash as like this boob, but then like when he does jump and attach the chainsaw, it's like a fuck yeah moment. It's just, what a wild character. I think the other thing, when we talk about Sam Raimi's strengths, I think some people might dismiss it and be like, oh, he's just always moving the camera, he's just being ridiculous. Like, there's like, anyone can do that. But it's like, think of all the people that have tried to do what Sam Raimi has done and failed. Like, so many people have tried to remake Evil Dead and not done well. And it's like, he's kind of like the only guy that could really do it,
Yeah. I think part of it might be like, he genuinely just has so much fun, it's infectious. Like, that's just something you can't really teach.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know how to fucking do that. I hope people have fun, like, listening to these. But, like, I don't know how to do... Like, you can't train someone to do that. But there's also just, like, like, when he's making a movie, it's not unmotivated camera shit. It's not unmotivated production. Yeah. Like, it doesn't look goofy on accident. Like, he's using that wide-angle lens in the middle of that fight with the old hag in the castle. And it's like, the usage of the camera feels modern. And I remember a statement from Bill Paxton when James Cameron saw Evil Dead 2. He calls up Bill Paxton after watching Evil Dead 2. He's like, Bill, I just saw the greatest movie. Like that, like it. I think he said like it redefined like cinema, which I don't think is incorrect. I genuinely believe Evil Dead 2, like the filmmaking in that, is so unique and groundbreaking that, like, yeah, it makes sense that James Cameron saw that and was like, this fucking changed the game. And drags Bill Paxton into it and is like, holy shit, he's right. Right? And it reminded me of that, where I'm just like, God, we're like, it feels like people are not making movies like that still, you know? And that's not a criticism of even like modern filmmaking stuff. It's just like, man, like Sam Raimi really is like a cut above, you know? Like, he's not just like doing great shit with the little amount he's got. Like, he's actively pushing forward, like, the camera as the storyteller, you know?
But I also, it's that problem. I think people are so irony poisoned sometimes that they think that, like, when people do that type of shit with the camera, that it's, like, a mistake, you know? That, like, oh, the director's being silly. Like, why would they do that? And it's like, no, they meant to do it, right? I hope the re-releases of the Spider-Man movies maybe got people to think about that a little more, considering how well they played with audiences, right? That, because, like, I know some people go, like, these movies are so cheesy, and I'm like, yeah, they know they are. Like, it's not trying to be the Matrix, right? Like, it is not trying to be the coolest shit on the planet. It knows how cheesy it is, and it plays that incredibly straight. But I don't know, like, yeah, I feel like there's a little bit of a reluctance to making movies like that now, or at least with modern audiences. I'm not totally sure, but
no, I think you're right, and I think part of that is, like, I mean, you talked up George Lucas maybe having a little bit of a thin skin. I've heard nothing but good words about the man Kevin Feige. He seems to be like someone who is, somehow, the single, like, non-repulsive producer in Hollywood. And I guess there was a moment during the editing, the post process on Doctor Strange 2, where, like, you know, Doctor Strange and Mordo, like the alternate universe Mordo, like they lock eyes, right, and you get those great like, Western style close ups, and I guess Feige's note was like, "That's really cheesy. You sure you want to do that?" And it's like, oh, dude, you came up with this guy. Like, you should know that's like, not only is that his thing, that's Sam Raimi's thing, it's also just like cool. Like, sorry, it's a little hokey, but I don't know. You're not making The Godfather here. Have a little fun, you know?
Yeah. We could spend a long time psychoanalyzing Kevin Feige and what maybe motivates
no. I wasn't trying to do that.
I'm just saying in terms of, like, the battles he must have lost over the years against studio executives to get to where he is now. You know what I'm saying? Like, that that maybe influences how he even watches stuff that he loves at this point. I feel like that's one of those where, like, that's probably some argument he had with an executive 20 years ago that he's still having. My name is Ash, and I'm a slave.
So the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, Bruce Campbell has said, like, you can edit the movies together to cut from when Ash is getting attacked at the final image of Evil Dead to when he's flying through the trees at the start of Evil Dead 2. And he says it could work as a movie. I generally agree with that. You're going to have some, you know, there's going to be some questionable stuff. But, like, I'm like, okay, if someone did a fan edit of that out there,
I'm sure it exists.
Watch that.
I'm sure it exists.
I think that'd be tons of fun. Army of Darkness, you got to be like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Where... this doesn't really track with Evil Dead 2. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But, like, I could see someone watching this for the first time being like, wait, didn't they just hail him as a hero in the last one immediately?
Yeah. Although he is captured by, whatever, there's like multiple armies going on.
It's Lord Arthur, who is King Arthur.
And Henry the Red.
Henry the Red. Although I guess because they never declare which army is what at the end of Evil Dead 2, I guess it's fine.
You never know. It don't matter. Like, it don't matter. But there's also, now we get the whole backstory of, like, he worked at S-Mart and stuff like that. So with Bridget Fonda, who was in this basically just because she was a fan of the movies.
Yeah.
Just asked if she could be in it. So.
Yeah. How does that happen?
Who knows? I mean, she does it, and then she works with Raimi again on A Simple Plan.
Yeah.
So
I gotta give that movie. I mean, no, not Simple Plan. My brain immediately jumped to For the Love of the Game. I gotta watch that one again. No, Simple Plan is great. Simple Plan is like, maybe top 3 Raimi. Yeah, for me now.
And she hasn't done anything. She kind of retired in like 2002, right? Like she married Danny Elfman and stopped doing movies.
Yeah. Also 9/11.
Is that it?
I don't know, but I'm assuming that fucked some people up.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. We all thought Bush was a good president for like 5 minutes.
Hey, wait a minute.
We all thought that wasn't a man clearly self-destructing on TV in like the first few days afterwards.
I mean, a president wouldn't lie.
No. Why would a president lie?
Yeah, especially about weapons of mass destruction. Invade a foreign country for its oil reserves.
Hey, it's not like that actually. It's not like that actually happened, and everyone knows it happened.
Yeah.
And all the criminals responsible walk free.
He makes cute paintings now, and he wrote a book about like supporting immigrants or some bullshit to make people try to forget. But thankfully, it looks like real people who are in touch with the world are not going to forget.
He wrote a book like right after his presidency called like 10 like decisions or something like that, right? And it's a very cowardly way of being like, look at these 10 big decisions I made and ignore the rest of my presidency, right? Like it's basically like why I made these 10 tough decisions, and it was stuff that was fairly popular, like you could disagree with it, but like, it wasn't. It's essentially being like, look at these decisions I made divorced of my bigger agenda, right? I'm just a guy like you. And I was always like, fuck you, dude. And then I realized recently I hate that book even more because I was going through my grandfather's old books, and he had Richard Nixon's book, which was basically the same thing. Nixon's book was at like 8 decisions or something like that of just... What a coward. Like, he even copied Nixon to that point.
Well, look, when all's said and done, and Bush and his father are looking up at us from the afterlife, that was the joke. They're going to be looking up at us, not down on us.
I know. I got it.
Yeah, that was it, yeah.
All right.
I'm looking in hell.
I'm looking at
okay, Army of Darkness.
Nixon's 6 Crises, which was written between... him when he was like trying to run for president, I think the first time, his response to Kennedy's book Profiles in Courage, and it's just Nixon being like, look at all these great things I did, including losing to Kennedy. So, Nixon, America's boogeyman. He's got his corpse has like a full-on erection right now for the shit going down.
Oh yeah, no, everything he did is technically legal now.
I know
because the president did it.
Yeah, he won. Nixon won, guys. Like, he got his way. Although maybe he's pissed. Where he's like, what the fuck? Like I just fucking lied about tape recording people. What the fuck? Like, this guy's doing shady real estate deals with government money. He's fucking giving our fucking nuclear secrets to the fucking it's just to the fucking Saudis. What the fuck? And you're gonna give him a pass? Like
Sock it to me.
Him and all the other corrupt presidents are probably waiting in hell with like bricks and baseball bats, like being like, motherfucker, like.
I know. We had to maintain our image.
Yeah,
you just swung your orange blonde dick around.
You realize how hard we had to work to be corrupt? Like, you realize that like it took genuine skill to be corrupt. Like, you're not even good at it, and you get a free. I know
Reagan's
pass.
Like, I convinced people to vote for me.
Yeah.
Like, do you understand how difficult that was?
I told him we could help
how
the
much I
lower
hate
class
fucking
by
poor
cutting
people?
taxes. Just, but then Trump's like, I will murder everyone, and people are like, I like the cut of his jib.
Also, if you hear water pouring, I am refilling my coffee.
There you
Because
go.
we started recording very early today.
Yeah, Diego gets up early for these recordings.
Yeah.
Whenever they drag
That's
out,
okay.
people understand I'm keeping Diego from lunch.
It's fine. It's fine. I got an easy week, so this is all good.
I do like
Unlike
that
Ash.
the technically the official title of this movie is Bruce Campbell versus Army of Darkness.
Wait, where?
In the opening credits.
Oh, yeah. I thought there was like a poster or something that said that too.
No. I mean,
I would get that
maybe-
on a poster, by the way.
Maybe it's on one of the posters, but
That feels like a super Yaki thing they could do, huh? Like Bruce Campbell versus Evil
yeah.
Dead.
Well, there's the fucking, there was that movie, My Name is Bruce, which is an early, not all this nerd shit is cute, right? Where it's basically Bruce Campbell as himself fighting monsters, you know? And it's not very good.
Aww.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, there's a couple of those, right? Like, unfortunately.
Yeah. I want to say, speaking of things that maybe are less than good, this movie was shot with the intention to make it like PG-13.
Yeah.
For accessibility, as well as being called Army of Darkness and not Evil Dead 3 or some variation of Evil Dead 3 because Universal didn't want anything to do with Evil Dead.
Yeah.
They wanted it to be pitched as like his original movie to make. They thought it would make more money.
And you have to remember,
Lo
Evil
and
Dead.
behold, they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, at this point, though, Evil Dead is like banned in England, right? Like, it's one of those movies that's like still very controversial. So like, I can understand Universal being like, we don't want people to think this is gonna be a fucking psycho horror movie, right? Like, I kind of understand that mentality. Then you call it Army of Darkness, and people don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
The Evil Dead fans don't
Which
know.
isn't a bad title. I would not say it's a bad title. It's just, you're kind of throwing people to the wolves here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're sacrificing, because Evil Dead 2 made money, so it's like you're sacrificing that audience for hopefully a new and larger one. And I guess it was a larger audience. It made more money than Evil Dead 2, but the budget was so much bigger. So I guess it kind of worked what they were going for, but it does make it a little awkward. And then it turns into a copyright problem of who owns Army of Darkness and who owns Evil Dead, right? Like,
yeah, like Ash versus Evil Dead couldn't reference this until like I think the third season of the show.
yeah. Like,
Which is just silly.
Rights are weird.
Yeah, our boy Dino is responsible for part of that.
Well, yeah.
Because, from the Manhunter fallout, go listen to the Hannibal retrospectives, although those probably don't hold up as well.
Yeah.
But, like, Dino had the rights to the Hannibal stuff with Manhunter, and then, Silence of the Lambs. Universal wants to make that. And it's a whole thing, but basically, like, it's like Army of Darkness gets kind of caught up in the middle of that because it's both those parties producing this movie. And I think even like in the making of, which is a great making of documentary, like Bruce Campbell says, like, "Oh, fucking, did we just waste like a year of our life since this movie fucked?" Like after work, like, oh, what are you gonna do? But thankfully, it gets sorted out enough that the movie can be released, and like it's one of those situations where like technically, officially, and legally, it made profit, but because of Hollywood accounting, it's kind of a bomb.
Yeah.
I don't understand anything. You don't either. The numbers on the Wikipedia say the budget's $11 million. The box office take was $21.5 million. In the documentary, Bruce Campbell says the budget was actually $13 million, and it only made $13 million. Now, I think he's referring to the domestic numbers, which aren't great, admittedly, but still, this was the time where you could make money back internationally. We don't do that anymore, really. That's very rare now.
The international box office is rare, and then home video is non-existent anymore. So, Good job, Hollywood, cutting off 2 revenue streams.
I know, what the fuck?
These guys aren't.
You're so
These guys are put in
everything's so
charge of
stupid.
making these decisions.
Yeah. But you know who made good decisions on this movie? The cinematographer Bill Pope. This is the second collaboration with Sam Raimi. He shot Darkman for him, which is Raimi's first Hollywood film, which is a banger, of course. Yeah, he's a terrific cinematographer. We've talked about him a lot. There's a reason for that. He's one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing now. He's probably shooting commercials or something to make money.
He just shot Unfrosted,
That's not true.
the Jerry Seinfeld movie.
No, you're making a joke.
I'm not lying.
I'm not looking that up specifically because I don't want that to be true. That can't be true. Matt, tell me that's not real.
Well, all right. Here's something though. So his last 4 credits are Unfrosted, Y2K, which is a disaster movie I don't even think is out yet. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumanium, and Shang-Chi.
I did hear about that one.
And Shang-Chi, but under Shang-Chi and Unfrosted, he's credited as William Pope. So I wonder if he wanted to distance himself from both those movies.
Maybe. Maybe. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe he just he was like, look, my lifestyle, I need to make a little extra money. These Marvel slops are gonna pay me X amount of dollars, right? Like,
but he really did shoot Unfrosted, which is a testament to Jerry Seinfeld's just complete inability to shoot a movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a movie. Jerry Seinfeld.
I did look it up.
Fuck that movie. I'm not even joking. Like, he could not, like, if it, in the hands of a person who actually knew where to put the camera, it would be okay.
And that's all you can ask for from Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
He is shooting the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon from the director of How to Train Your Dragon, which, if that's not a damning sign of the industry, I don't know what is. That's not even anything against Dean DeBlois or How to Train Your Dragon. I'm a fan of both. But just, like, he's someone who's wanted to move into live-action for a while.
And he can only do it
very
by
clear
doing the same shit he's been doing over and over again.
Yeah.
But
that is unfortunate.
Hey, that's another Universal one. It's another Universal money maker is those fucking How to Train Your Dragon movies.
Are they? I thought the last 2 didn't really make money.
I thought the last one didn't, but it was at one point. I think they make a shit ton of merchandise.
Oh, there's that. Oh, you know what? No, they're all solid successes.
Yeah.
I'm looking at them right now. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I bet the fucking toothless dolls that just fucking fly off the shelves. I'm not even joking.
I see a lot of nerds into How to Train Your Dragon.
It's that fucking music. Like, I love that first one. I think the sequels are pretty good, but like that fucking music, that score is unbelievable.
That was when DreamWorks got smart and was like, what if we just did genre movies?
Yeah.
Like, what if we did a fantasy film? What if we did a science fiction? Like, instead of trying to be Pixar over and over again. And they made interesting stuff. And then they kind of got bought. But hey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad.
What you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so I was mentioning one of my least favorite things about the movie is that it was shot for PG-13.
Yep.
It doesn't even get the PG-13. And I think a lot of people in the production assumed it was never really going to get PG-13 by the end of the production because it was like the MPAA kind of had it out for Raimi, basically, because it's like they kind of fuck Evil Dead. Like, they're not the first two Evil Deads. They're not going to get like an R rating.
It's great to have an agency.
They're not going to be like welcomed with open arms.
It's great to have an agency that has it out for directors. That's another great system we got in place.
Yeah, and thankfully I think people take them less seriously now, but they could still like be very vindictive, I'm sure. But yeah, like it's very unfortunate. And there's like, okay, so there is the geyser of blood, right? Like, okay, but there's a geyser of blood in Jaws, and that got a PG. You know,
Yeah.
like otherwise the movie doesn't really have gore. It's got goop. There's lots of goop. Actually, there's not even that much goop.
When did we
Just
really? When did the shift happen where we really started cracking down on violence and stuff? Like,
you know, I think we have this perception that like 80s horror was very like rebellious because of that, and I don't think that's entirely off base. Like, I mean, when did the video nasties become a thing?
well, video nasty
Late
start
70s, early 80s, right?
it's got to be right around the time VHS is on the rise, right? So, and that was straight up like actual censorship, right? Like,
Yeah.
that was just straight up banning movies. So yeah, I think in the 70s, but that's more England, you know. But it's weird where it's like because the country moves more conservative in the 80s, like we get Reagan in office, all that shit. But it feels like for at least the first chunk of it was like violence was like very prevalent in our media, you know. And I just wonder when the shift really happened, where it was like, oh no, we really are pearl clutching about all this shit, and I'm just trying to think of what marginalized group did we secretly blame for it, right? Like, I mean, that's the Reagan era turns into this like weird, like we're not going to solve any of our problems. It's all going to be personal responsibility of the family, you know. And so if you don't, if you have a strong family unit, so I guess it empowers the family, and then that leads to a lot of like moral crises of like what your kids are into, you know. And you see your kid playing Mortal Kombat, and suddenly you think Western civilization is on the verge of collapse. You know, and because it's just it feels like by the end of the 80s, it's like that's when that shift really begins, and then it's just kind of a continuous problem through the 90s, and then we have the first like Senate hearing on violent video games in like 92 or something.
Oh yeah.
Which they brought up shit like Night Trap. Like it wasn't even like the insane stuff we have now. But like there's Joe Lieberman, that fuck was out there being like, because he was on the panel that investigated violent video games. It's just interesting to me that like I was just trying to think of like what the shift really was, because I think like by the end of the 80s though, that's when it's like all of Reagan's shit like really starts fucking everyone up, and like everyone starts going crazy. We got the crack epidemic, we got the AIDS crisis, and I think like we just started entering a really nihilistic period in the culture. So although for me, a lot of people when they remember the 80s, it feels like they remember the 90s. You know what I'm talking about? Like
a little bit. You might be having a different point. This is the discussion I sort of had related to Maxine, the Ty West film, which people are super chill and have normal opinions about.
People have normal opinions about Ty West in general.
Yeah. And I'll say I wasn't a big fan of it, which was kind of disappointing because I did like his previous two movies specifically. And I think part of my response to that is that 80s riffs or analyses or deconstructions or even send-ups or just plain old homages, it's the millionth version of that versus, the grindhouse perspective on violence and porn as a gateway to artistry with X. I found very compelling, and even more so with Pearl, which touches upon like the Technicolor musical type thing, Spanish flu, and like basically the beginning of cinema culture. These are things that are not often discussed anymore in mainstream media, and so I found those very compelling and enjoyable on their own terms, and so something like that. And I think part of the reason why people maybe kind of let Maxine fade away faster is that, if you're going to homage something like the 80s slasher, like we look back at the fondly at the good ones, and people have nostalgia for like, oh, they were made very cheap, and like, there's something to them. I don't think many of them were very good, right? I don't think that's wild to say. I think the horror stuff we remember is the more outlandish stuff, like Evil Dead, the splatter horror, Return of the Living Dead type stuff. A lot of dead in there. Even like The Blob, I think is like almost cathartic in a sense of like just how explosive its gore and violence is, right? And like that's a very politically angry movie under the surface of it too.
Yeah, it's very much a Reagan fuck you movie.
Yeah. And so I think we remember that, but the horror genre itself, unless it was tapping into more supernatural or like wild sci-fi concepts, like it's honestly, I think there's a reason a lot of it isn't spoken of highly versus like Scream 15, 20 years later.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's all I'm saying. And maybe that's not the exact point you were making, but I think that kind of leads into the point you're making. Maybe like just what we're remembering fondly of the 90s era specifically, like with the censorship coming in and like media being more accessible and talked about, and like the internet, right?
Yeah.
The invention of the internet is kind of a big thing too when it comes to media being accessible. And censorship is a big part of that, too.
Yes.
I think I had another point in there that I wanted to make, but it's over now.
I think I did, too, but I lost it as well. But I was more just fascinated with, like, the shift. And it is something where, like, these are, like the Evil Dead movies are early cult objects, right? Like, they're early, like, you have to know a guy who knows a guy to know about these movies, right? They aren't something that you're going to find, they're not the most easily accessible movies, at least for a little while. But, like, right when the internet starts taking shape, these things become classics, They become tentpoles of the genre. And, now it's just like everyone knows these movies, but at the time it's like I guess you just don't know, and when you're in the area you just don't know, right? Like you don't know what's going to be the lasting thing. What's weird about slashers though is that we conceptualize slashers as being such an 80s thing, and they're kind of dead by like 83, like by like right around 83, 84 it just turns into franchise filmmaking, right? Like it's Halloween. It's Freddy, it's Jason, it's Leatherface occasionally, but that's it. Like it stops being the one and done kind of slasher movies, I guess, that are just about anything, But it's crazy how many slasher movies were made between just Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
like no wonder people
and it's like
got sick of it.
Look at the ones that like have staying power. It is like the heavily genre like supernatural stuff.
Yeah,
I mean that's part of the reason Evil Dead stuck around. Apart from like the quality, right? Because quality doesn't necessarily like guarantee an audience, as the Evil Dead movies see at the box office.
Yeah.
Until these last two, for some reason, maybe it really is Bruce Campbell. Unfortunately. Like, maybe they just see his face and like, yeah, I don't want to see that guy.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't...
Even though he's like a classically handsome guy.
Yeah, he's classically handsome, but he's also like, he's almost a parody of a handsome person, right? Which I think can maybe keep people a little bit at a distance. Because every time they tried to make him more conventional, it didn't work. Like, he's kind of got to be a bit of a piece of shit.
He's got to be a piece of shit, or he's got to be doing like almost like a bit. Like when he shows up in the Hudsucker Proxy, like it's perfect.
Yeah,
he's perfect for that mode, and he never really gets to operate in that mode again.
Like I said, I think he goes to television after that, which is like this is back in that era where television and movies are like very siloed, right? They're not crossover things. If you're a television person, you're gonna die a television person, and if you go from movies to TV, that's like a death knell, right? Like it's just over. And it's just he was never on the wavelength of where the culture was, which is a shame. In terms of the big success, but I mean, he has a legacy that's worth it. You know, like he's clearly a beloved figure. So I guess it all works out in the end. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, like he never got to be as big as Bruce Willis did in his heyday, but like that's fine.
But also, would we like hate him if he did, right? Like, would he become overexposed, and we'd have like dozens of really shitty Army of Darkness ripoffs, right? That just where it's like, oh yeah, whatever, like didn't really work.
Yeah.
Maybe
you know, I will say I do kind of want there to be more Army of Darkness ripoffs now. Like everyone's trying to remake Evil Dead all the time, right? And like for good reason. That was made cheap, and it feels like a movie you could go out and make with your buddies.
Yeah.
But I would love to see people try to remake Army of Darkness in their own way. Too.
Well, that's well, what are you just saying? Where it's like it's very easy to go out in the woods and make a movie with people, even though the productions of both Evil Dead movies were very torturous. But then you're like, and then this one was the hardest. So that's why this doesn't happen as much, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
like maybe people try and they're like halfway through, you're like, you know what?
Well, even
maybe.
Speaking of just like no budget filmmakers, the Red Letter Media guys, they're very open talking about regretting that they made Space Cop because they realized at a certain point that there was basically just special effects in every single shot of Space Cop that and like that's, you know, very difficult to do. And so it's why people don't do like as high genre stuff on an independent level as opposed to, as much as I'd love to see people try, it's the reason why you don't see it as much. But it would be fun to go out with just get some skeletons and just start running around behind a castle.
Throwing them at your friend's face.
Yeah. I mean, it would be fun.
Which is what happens in this movie. Sam Raimi just throws skeletons. He chucks fucking skeletons at Bruce Campbell's face for like a full minute, it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, they do that on, that's the Spider-Man movies. He's throwing debris in Tobey Maguire's face. Like, he just gets a kick out of it. So,
I don't know. What is your favorite thing about this movie?
Well, I mean, it's just it really is Bruce Campbell. Like he's just such a fun. Ash is just such a fun character, and it's partly so elastic that like you can put him in these different scenarios. I do like that we get evil Ash as well in this. The whole, and I like that. Again, this is one of those like. How do I explain it? A lesser movie would have just had a scene where, like, an evil Ash appears, right? Like, they wouldn't have done, but, like, the fact that they go through this whole convoluted thing of the mini Ashes, and then, like, one of them has to dive in his mouth, and then they has to split off of him, in an homage to the film Manster, by the way. A horror movie no one remembers, where the eye appears on the shoulder and shit like that. That like, yeah, it's a good example of just how they have fun with these individual set pieces that, you know, like a cheaper film would have just had just like, oh, there's a drop of blood that turns into evil Ash, right? Like that wouldn't have been fun. But
yeah.
The fact that they build a movie around this whole sequence, and I bet you when you're an executive watching it, you're being like, "What the fuck is this? Like, why are we doing this?"
Yeah, I mean, here to bring up like the brilliant structure of these movies and a little bit of brilliance of James Cameron again, is that like, yeah, I think the first studio notes you get on trying to make an Evil Dead movie like this is that, well, what is it like, you know, let's not dilly-dally, let's kind of keep the pace up for the narrative, you know?
It doesn't advance the plot, what are we doing?
Yeah. And then, you know, James Cameron's quote about like Jake and Neytiri flying in the first Avatar, he's like, I want to see it, like, and if I want to see it, that means other people probably want to see it. Now, a good director like Sam Raimi and James Cameron can recognize, okay, if that didn't work or that went too long, maybe they can cut back. I don't know. It feels like when you all make a movie together, producers included, that you just want what's best for the movie.
Does anyone really indulge anymore though? Like what's the example of someone doing this but like, okay, buddy, wrap it up. Like
We both saw Long Legs recently.
Mm-hmm.
I think that movie totally gets a kick out of just like holding a shot or like zooming out very slowly or zooming in very slowly. Like I got a kick out. I think that movie's very like way more indulgent than it is like precise, but that's what I liked about it, you know? I got a kick out of that, even though I'm not like over the moon about it. That's like I want that for movies.
I like Long Legs, and it's starting to grow on me more the more I think about it. So, so I want to rewatch it.
Yeah. Or you know what? I rewatched Abigail recently. And I still like that movie. I think that movie kind of got swept under the rug a little bit, unfortunately. But there's like everyone knows you know the twist in Abigail, right?
Yeah, everyone knows it. Yeah.
Yeah, they fucked it up. It would have been way better received had they not given that away. But like, there's extended dance sequences because like vampire ballerina. She's having a good time, covered in blood and dancing around like the corpses of her victims, and it's like it's very splatter happy. And, like, I have some criticisms, like, maybe the narrative could be a little more concise. But also, like, yeah, if you got a ballerina vampire, have her do vampire ballerina shit.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's fine to, like, let her dance to Danzig for a little bit. I'm watching a ballerina vampire movie.
I guess what I'm asking, though, is there an example? Because you mentioned, like, a good director knows, like, when to pull back. But are we even getting directors that indulge too much right now, that where we go stop, like where we would watch it and go stop, like
I think I talked about it on our Bad Boys retrospective for Bad Boys 4. In the moment I was like, you kind of cut into that same angle a lot, but then at the end I thought, well, no one else is doing this, so you guys go ahead and keep doing that. I think Adil and Bilal get a real kick out of indulging in the action stuff.
Okay.
So maybe them. But again, that's like I'm kind of
because I'm just at this point. I'm like
I'm struggling to think of others.
I'd rather see people indulge right now than do script is king bullshit, right? Like it's you know, we can agree. Like yes, there are people who try to do this and don't succeed, but I can't think of anyone even not succeeding right now. As like, and I can only think of a few people who are actually indulging. I guess everything everywhere all at once maybe falls into this category.
Oh yeah, which is why people like on the internet maybe hate it, and I'm like crying all the time. Not even related to the movie, just crying. No,
I think a lot of us are. I
do love like the indulgence of these set pieces and like the gags.
Yeah,
you know? and you know, to the point of Evil Ash too, like. It's not just like a fun monster design, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
It is also like, hey, Ash like maybe has to confront some stuff about himself. Like that is the extent of it, and it's not like super deep, but it is there for like a narrative purpose, you know.
Yeah, it's his selfish side essentially. Like
yeah. Now Ash doesn't necessarily grow for the better for it, or at least like he doesn't. He doesn't grow better for himself. He helps other. He becomes a hero.
Yeah.
In this movie,
he realizes he fucked up. Like, because he doesn't do Klaatu Barada Nikto correctly.
Yeah.
Which is a reference to.
Oh, I thought.
No, I wanted to see if you got it. I'm testing you.
I don't know.
Oh my god, the day the Earth stood still, man.
Well, Klaatu, right? That's the name of the guy?
Yeah, Klaatu's the robot. Or no, the alien, and he's got a...
Gort is the robot.
Gort is the robot.
Now who's fucking fake?
No, look, I'm telling you what's happening. He's got to go Klaatu Barada Nikto. Like, he's got to tell the robot not to kill everyone.
No.
There's a good movie.
That is a good movie.
Yeah.
What the fuck was I saying now? No, I lost it.
We
fine.
were talking about Ash's arc.
Oh, yeah. There's a cut set piece. I don't think they even ever filmed it, and they kind of had to talk Sam Raimi down from it. But do you know about this? With
No.
the kids?
No. Go ahead.
Okay. So like Ash, Raimi wanted Ash like getting coward, like becoming a coward again. God, I wanted to say it how Bruce Campbell said it, but whatever. Like, he was like gonna like shiver and shit and like hide in a closet and like be so scared that he'd be found by like a group of kids or something, and they would have been like inspiring him to walk outside the gate and like offer a peace offering, like, we're not gonna have to fight if they like accept peace, even though they're monsters. And so there would have been like an image of Ash walking outside with a group of kids by his side, and he would have given them some sort of peace offering. I don't know what it would have been. And then obviously the Deadites immediately reject it and start trying to kill everyone. And Ash runs back inside and shuts the gate. But the kids are left on the outside and they start banging on the gates. Now that's a hysterical sequence.
That's pretty funny.
I think that
I get why
that
it was
is
cut,
like,
but it is pretty funny.
yeah,
because like that's
maybe that's a good one.
It's a little late in the game to do that. Like you can't do that after doing the whole training montage, right? Like you can't do that then. But it's not the worst. I do like it.
Yeah. And I kind of want to jump to the end a little bit because I like the differences in the ending. Like Ash saves the day, and you get pretty good action. I know Raimi was a little upset he couldn't get like this great like extended wide of Ash fighting Evil Ash on the staircase. Like he really wanted that, and I guess they did like fucking like dozens of takes, and then at one point Raimi's like, well, I guess that's not working, so we're gonna have to do like thousands of close-ups. Which is a bummer.
Oh well.
So I'm sure it was just like fucking time, budget, and having to do all of that and all of that makeup and armor.
Oh my god, it must have been a nightmare.
Yeah. Also, they filmed in the California summer.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Fucking yeah. How is no one dead? Yeah. So Ash saves the day, and he gets sent back to his time, and we hear more about we see his S-Mart department store, and he's explaining his story, and to
Ted Raimi.
Who is very interested, obviously, in his story and not disinterested in the slightest.
It's amazing that Ted Raimi has that face.
I know.
That's a perfect face for that type of guy.
Yeah. And then we get the last Deadite crash in the party, and then Ash gets to be a big hero and does the cool shit with the Winchester rifle. Baby. Yeah. It's awesome. It's super fun. Not the ending that was intended. A lot of people know this now, but for those that don't, the original ending, instead of being sent back to his present day, Ash was going to miscount a number of drops of potion to bring him back to the present. But because like some rocks tumble down,
distracts him,
Ash,
and he drinks too much.
Yeah. And then he wakes up in post-apocalyptic London, and he screams like the end of like the end of the last movie, frankly.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and test audiences thought that was too much of a downer. I think it's hysterical.
It is funny, yeah.
I guess the original plan was to do a fourth Evil Dead where he would have teamed up with like robots to fight the Deadites, so it would have been like a sci-fi horror mashup. And like, I kind of really want to see that.
No, I do too. But it's
happened.
Just the moment they cut that ending, it was never going to happen, right? Like,
yeah.
So, oh well.
Yeah.
Man,
I mean, that's part of like the proof that Raimi's like not just a horror guy. Like he tried to move like his one horror franchise away from horror to focus on like action adventure.
Yeah, he wanted to do a fantasy epic. Like he wanted.
Yeah.
He's always trying. He's always trying
to do a
stuff.
sci-fi thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like Darkman is him because he tried to get. I believe he wanted to do the Shadow, right? Like he wanted to do that, and they wouldn't let him. So he does Darkman basically because he couldn't do the Shadow. And he's much more elastic than people give credit for. And then he kind of uses more successful genres, the Trojan horse stuff he maybe wants to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and I guess Army of Darkness is still a classic. I guess like I don't know how people feel about it now because like we're in that weird like backlash to nerd culture thing, and I feel like all sacred cows are just getting ripped as a result. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the Evil Dead's. I feel like because now with the newer ones, which are just like straight horror movies, and I do like them. I feel like Army of Darkness has kind of been like nudged to the side just a little bit. It's like, okay, you had your time in the spotlight. Now it's like, here's the fucked up like scary movie stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Although Evil Dead seems to be very prevalent still, where everyone acknowledges like, nah, that's probably just the greatest movie ever made. You know, like, so maybe like when the Evil Dead movies sequels like start leaning into other genre stuff again, which I would like to see. I feel like we've gotten a lot out of like, this is gonna be the most fucked up movie you've seen all year.
Yeah.
Type marketing for those. Which I have enjoyed again. Like I would like to see like, oh, maybe you do a sci-fi type Evil Dead.
I feel like
maybe
you
do, yeah.
You can only really do it once though. Like I feel like you can get the audience back, and then when you try to do it, like it'll confuse people. Not to be a cynic
Do you
about
mean
it,
like
like
the genre within Evil Dead?
yeah, if you try if they tried to ride the success of Evil Dead Rise into something else, I don't know if it would play as well, as much as I would like them to do it. But I feel like people just want, you know, if they're marketed a horror movie, they want a horror movie, right?
Yeah, maybe that's it.
So
Maybe that's why these made money and the other ones didn't.
yeah, who knows? I have no idea. I don't totally know. We're in a weird transitional period in cinema, obviously. So
Yeah. Yeah, and people continue to embrace horror.
yeah, horror. I mean, Longlegs is doing way better than it should. Honestly.
Yeah. Also, proof that, hey, if you do like a marketing campaign that's like exciting and interesting, because marketing's not real, you could literally do whatever you want with it anyways. People will probably check out your movie.
Yeah.
You know, have some fun with it. Don't just release trailers and some posters with floating heads.
Yeah.
Not that complicated, in my opinion.
Yeah, or you could do the bare minimum, Netflix. But
Hey, how great was Hitman?
you know, I did have that moment the other day where I was like, I wonder when Hitman's coming out.
Oh, very fun movie.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Looks like fucking Longlegs is closing in on 50 million.
That is impressive.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, 25 million. You know, just you know, not that I care about these things. I was just like thinking because I was like, oh, it's gonna be like a success, but for like an independent horror film. And I was like, all right, Neon's doing it, so okay, if they're promoting it, then maybe. Yeah. Oh wow, 20 million opening weekend. Whoa.
It's also funny to me that this is Oz Perkins' fourth movie, and I literally didn't know the second one he did existed. Like I vaguely remember it, but I didn't remember it. And of course, that's the one Netflix put out. Like I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Like of course, that's the one with no cultural legacy.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, to talk about, you know, movies that you just go to a cabin to shoot or like go to a house to shoot. It's like I will say I admire that movie. Definitely feels more like a first movie than his first movie. We'll put it that way.
All right. Well, hey, you know, I'll blame. I
do like
Netflix.
Oz Perkins though.
I want to blame Netflix though, so I'm blaming Netflix.
Oh yeah, whatever. Go ahead. Unless Netflix is interested in any of my screenplays, in which case I love Netflix so much.
I don't know if I want to tempt them. Don't want to give them something they would just bury, even if the money's good.
Yeah, but I do like money.
I do too. You know? I do too.
Yeah. I will one day I will share a brief story, not of near success or anything like that, but just something of I have my limits. I'll say there's definitely stuff I will say no to.
You mean about? Are you going to tell the story about how you were almost directing The Flash?
No.
That story you've told me in confidence that totally happened.
No, No, that's not real. That's not real.
Oh,
That's
really?
not real.
It's not? Thanks for clarifying.
No problem. I'm concerned someone out there might take. You have to be so specific these days.
Yeah.
Because I'll tweet like absurd shit, and then I'll get just a variety of responses. I can tell who follows me and who doesn't, given the responses. Let's just say that.
No, I get that too sometimes.
Yeah.
So Diego was not going to direct The Flash because he was too busy working on Blade.
Yep. I'm also no longer directing Blade.
Oh,
Sorry
boy.
to disappoint everyone.
Oh, no. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
At least you always got Avengers the Kang Dynasty. Is that what it's
Yeah, they're
called?
probably going to change that.
Why?
We could get into a whole Marvel thing, but we're not going to because we're talking about good movies. Yeah, that Army of Darkness, great. Check out all the Evil Deads. I think all the Evil Deads are good, frankly.
Yeah.
I
The
know
only
someone
one
here is maybe less hot on the 2013 one.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. I don't know. It's not my favorite, I guess. Well, you know.
But you like Don't Breathe, right?
I did like Don't Breathe. So, and that's like kind of a disgusting movie.
No, it's repulsive. It's vile. I don't blame anyone for being like, fuck this. I do like it more than Evil Dead.
Hopefully Freddy
Evil Dead, I mean.
Alves is just like every other movie of his is good, because he also did The Girl in the Spider's Web, which is terrible.
Yeah, although, that's not really his fault.
Yeah, it's a lot of people's fault.
That's studio hack shit. Yeah.
But got Alien Romulus on the horizon.
Yeah. This will probably come out after that, frankly.
Yeah, you're probably right. So I either hate it or I'm indifferent.
Yeah. Might be good.
It's a ringing
I was
endorsement.
excited.
A ringing endorsement. Oh, what happened? What happened?
Just the trailers haven't really wowed me. Like,
Yeah.
I know they're holding back on. Like, I had some stuff spoiled for me, and it does sound compelling. But I'm also like, this totally depends on the execution. And then one big thing, which we've already mentioned before, that I'm like, that better not.
Well, I'm sure
be real.
this is a detail that people find really cool. It is actually set between the events of Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
That's a really cool idea. Why do they make why do they make all the Alien films so needlessly fucking complicated?
I'm gonna give Fede some credit though, because like a year ago he was out like espousing like, oh man, I fucking love all the Alien movies, you know, like I think they're all like great and interesting, and I think he got some notes back from that, because now he's like constantly, I really wanted to go back to the first and second one, squinting at his note cards. You know, take it back to basics.
Yeah. Doesn't
people...
sound like the studio one on this film at all.
It sounds like someone was like, don't tell people you like Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Don't go out doing that. You know, like, and for the love of God, don't say shit about your love of Alien Resurrection. Which I find funny. I don't know. Sam Raimi, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead.
Yeah.
That's a franchise.
It is. A better one.
Also the Alien franchise, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. There are more there
Matt,
are more good Evil Dead films than Alien films.
I don't agree.
And
but
soon
I love them both.
And soon there will be more better TV series.
I don't claim that. I can't claim that. That's how you know it's fucking bad, and I'm like, fuck this. Matt, thanks for joining me for this Army of Darkness discussion.
Yes.
I'll just keep saying links to our stuff down below.
Yep.
Keep checking out the Failed Blockbusters Fantasy Edition.
Check out my
Fantasy Blockbusters.
Check out my Twitter. I'm trying to get a TV fixed. I can't find anyone to fix it.
Oh yeah. Hopefully it's resolved by this point, by the time you're listening to it.
Yeah, nothing happening yet, but I would like to, if you're listening to this in the future, I would like to get this TV fixed. So.
All right, next up episode, because we're doing these at our own leisure. You don't get a vote this year. at least in our fictional elections.
We're
Hopefully
trying
get
to.
one
We
in the
want
real
to
elections.
save the voting energy for a specific time this year.
Oh, really? What time?
I was trying to think of a joke, but I couldn't think of one. Like,
It's fine. Yeah, we can't joke about politics anymore. We're just tired and like,
We're
all
all
right,
good.
we're it's not hopeless. Let's
Yeah.
keep this energy up.
yeah. I really don't feel like it's hopeless at all.
No, really,
but,
I don't either.
Yeah. But let's all get our shit together right now, and Kamala, don't say anything stupid. Or if you do it in like an
Fingers
endearing.
crossed.
You got to do it in like an endearing way, because people think you're like kind of like everyone's annoying aunt, but like that's kind of endearing, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can ride that shit a little bit, like when people thought Joe Biden was cool. So.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I got a fucking I can bring this up now because he's not running, but for the last local election, I got a flyer from the local Democrats that did a Dark Brandon meme on it.
Oh God.
Yeah, and I was just like, what are you doing? And yeah.
Well, you know, I was gonna make a really bad joke, but I might get a knock on my door, so I'm not going to do the joke. But I will say,
here's to a speedy recovery to Joe Biden.
I mean, there's probably a reason why he didn't announce his pulling out of the race over video. It's not a speedy recovery.
What do you mean? He's a spry 81-year-old.
He's just a fucking kid, man.
He's just a
fucking kid.
He loves his cars.
Yeah. Good night, everyone. Tip your waiters. We'll be back next week with Rain of Fire.
Yes.
Rain of Fire.
Rain of Fire. Ah.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. If you didn't like this episode, like and subscribe anyways, because you might find something you do like. Take care, everyone. We have been professionally unprofessional.
Bye.